In the world of racing games, many series have faded away. This might be due to the developer shutting down, the game's not selling well, or that the publisher doesn't see profitability in the franchise anymore. Whatever the case may be, we all have those series we want back. If I had to pick a racing series to make a return, it would have to be Burnout. Burnout is such a special series in my eyes. I played most of the games when I was younger, with Revenge still being my favorite game of all time. I fondly remember spending countless hours with Point of Impact, Takedown, Revenge, and Paradise. If I'm having a bad day, I can play a Burnout game to put a smile back on my face. While there are many other series that I want to see come back that aren't really feasible, Burnout still has a chance for a triumphant return. The franchise may has never been as popular as the Need for Speed series, but with the recent games not doing so well, I think it's time for EA to shelve Need for Speed to bring Burnout back. We are in a period where arcade racers seem to be regaining popularity, and there's still a lack of good vehicular combat games. Burnout would be the perfect game to take back its crown as the king of the vehicular combat arcade racer. If we were to get a new Burnout game, here's what I would like to see. I definitely would want to return to the non-open world structure, since you have a lot more variety in tracks and geographical locations. I would also like to see customizations for vehicles. Take the idea of the body kits applied to the higher tier cars in Revenge, but let us decide on what parts we choose to put on a vehicle. You still have the pick up and play aspect of the series, but we would be able to express ourselves better in the cars that we drive. I would like to see a destructible guardrail system that can be damaged or broken if it's grinded on or if a car crashes into it. It would give much more risk as the guardrails would not always be a complete safety net like they are in all of the games. Other things like 4-player split screen and crossplay for online multiplayer would be great additions. I'm also open to getting a spiritual successor or a game that is inspired by the series. So far the closest games we got as Burnout spiritual successors have been Ridge Racer Unbounded and Dangerous Driving. Yet both games just don't come close to capturing the Burnout series. Ridge Racer Unbounded is a weird hybrid of Burnout, Flatout, and Ridge Racer that doesn't do any of those series well, and Dangerous Driving ended up being a boring, broken mess that should have never been released. I still hold on to hope that we can have a new Burnout game in the future, but we'll have to wait to see what happens. While I would love to see a new Burnout game, we also can't forget there are other great series that players want back. So without further ado, I welcome some special guests to add their input for this question.
So for all the racing game franchises that seemed to die out in the 7th generation, a lot of them had a unique draw or twist to them. Ridge Racer's style and pace of the game, along with the drifting and the track design and all of it combined together, create an experience that you won't find anywhere else. Midnight Club has open routes with scattered checkpoints and crazy shortcuts that allow for really unique racing. And of course, there's nothing on the market now like Burnout. But I actually want to talk about a franchise that may not have a unique hook at first to some people, being Project Gotham Racing. And while Project Gotham Racing may not look so unique or stand out to some people, it actually has a lot of smaller elements that I think represent kind of a lost art in the racing game genre. Now first off, if you've never played PGR, it's an arcade track racing game. And arcade track racing games that use licensed cars but aren't realistic seem to generally cause confusion in the racing game community these days. Nowadays, most arcade racers are open world, and most track racing games either have to be sim or simcade. And if you go online and ask people, is there space for Project Gotham Racing today? Most people will probably say no. To Microsoft, if you want to race on tracks, you have Forza Motorsport, and if you want to have an arcade experience, you have Forza Horizon. But PGR felt like a very different experience than either one of those games. And that's why I want to mention some aspects of PGR feeling like a lost art. For example, all the tracks in Project Gotham Racing are based off of real cities, so you can essentially have the sense of having a world tour, being able to get different realistic interpretations of different places without all of them needing to be a giant open world map. Yes, other games like Grid do this as well, but in PGR, every track is guaranteed to be modeled after real-world roads. This is probably one of the factors as to why every track in PGR feels like I'm playing what would be a full-scale Forza Horizon map, but downscaled to a track. Talking about PGR also feels like a good opportunity to talk about smaller car lists. It seems that to a lot of people, the immediate way to make a racing game better is just to add more cars. But for a lot of racing games, this is actually not the case. Sometimes a bigger car list can actually work against your game. It's hard to balance hundreds and hundreds of cars. But games like PGR and even Dirt 2 and 3 reminds me how nice it is to actually have a smaller car list. Each car feels more important, it feels more fun to unlock each car, and in the case of PGR, there are some really cool standouts. I also think the career progression in PGR is something that is very worth taking a look at, especially Project Gotham Racing 2. You worked through different car classes in the Kudos World Series, but in each of these car classes, you had a variety of different events that weren't just races or time trials. Things like speed challenges, cone challenges, one-on-ones, regular races, and more make games like PGR 2 very enjoyable to progress through, and it's something that a lot of racing games, including ironically Forza, are missing. But it's not only the variety of events that make PGR enjoyable to progress through, but it's two different things that PGR does that gives the gameplay more depth. The first one is the difficulty setting. Most games you just pick easy, hard, normal, or whatever, and you just go on about it and then adjust if you find the difficulty too easy or hard. You know, it makes sense. In PGR, you have to pick the difficulty every single time. And PGR is not the only game to do this. Need for Speed Underground did something similar. The difference here is that in PGR, you pick a medal that corresponds to each different event. Each event has bronze, silver, gold, platinum, etc., and each one of them has a different target. For example, in a speed trap, the harder the medal, you have to hit a higher speed. In a cone challenge, you'll have to dodge more cones. In a regular race, the opponents are going to be easier or harder, etc. But the fact that every single event has every difficulty plastered on it, and that you need to go back and beat it on the highest difficulty to 100% the game for every event, gives it a very different feeling of difficulty. You can get through the game on some of the easier settings, but you need to go back and be better if you really want to beat the game. But this also means PGR is very flexible in how people play it. It can be more casual, and people who maybe aren't as good at the game can get through it. But if you want more challenge, you also have a higher goal that you can reach, and you get more rewards that correspond to it. Forza Horizon tries to be super open-ended, but it just ends up not really having that much goal or progression in it sometimes, but I think PGR did this much better. The second way Project Gotham Racing creates more depth in its gameplay is the Kudos system. You're probably aware of the skill point system in Forza Horizon. Basically, you chain different stunts and do different combos like drifting, driving in reverse, taking jumps, etc. to earn points, and then you can spend those skill points on different perks for your car. But in Project Gotham Racing, in games like PGR 4, Kudos are the main currency, meaning that the more risky driving you do, the more money you'll earn. And since PGR's tracks are so tight, it's actually really difficult to get Kudos. You can get Kudos in many various ways, but just getting Kudos at all is notably more difficult than Forza Horizon, meaning that you need to balance your driving with risky driving to earn Kudos, but also safe driving to confidently get ahead of the pack. And in my opinion, the Kudos system and selectable difficulty create a lot of cool gameplay depth in PGR. PGR also has a lot of interesting standout features, such as the radio station feature that in PGR 1 and 2 would change depending on where you were in the game. And the radio stations in the game tried to accurately reflect where you were driving.
Power, hit radio. 106.3 Stockholm.
Metropolis Street Racer, which is basically PGR before PGR was a thing, back on the Dreamcast actually had a feature to where you could put in your local time and it would sync up with the time zones in every location in the game. So if you drove in Tokyo, for example, it would be the real time Tokyo was in at the current time you were actually driving in the game. Kind of like Burnout Paradise's match local time feature, but taken to the next level. And of course, one of the fan favorite features of PGR, the walkable garage. And in PGR 2, my so far favorite implementation of it is the walkable car dealer. It's this crazy maze of different car brands. It's actually kind of hard to find things, but that's kind of the fun of it too. You can spend so much time just looking around trying to find a brand you want, and then seeing what they all look like together in this really cool looking room. Something is so cool about this feature, and games like The Crew 2 still offer walkable dealers and houses and stuff today, but it really doesn't hit the mark like this game does to me. And I think a lot of the ethos of PGR and what I want to talk about in this video is it's smaller game size, but increased density and detail. And you could probably make this for a lot of games, like some of the Dirt and Grid games, but why I want to bring it PGR is because it feels in some ways like the exact opposite of what Microsoft is currently doing with their racing games. While Forza Motorsport looks to be a nice reboot of things, currently Forza Motorsport 7 was known to be a very bloated entry with a very common complaint being that there was a ton of off-road cars copied from Horizon. And in Forza Horizon 5, some older popular cars actually have a lot of details missing in their models as they're ported from older Forza games. On top of that, with Forza Horizon 4 and 5's big car list, it's hard to play online in those games because you can't really balance the cars correctly. There's just too many cars to have that many be competitive in each class. And the design ethos of PGR feels like the exact opposite of this. Just from how much variety the game has in game modes, how much interesting features there are, especially for the time. And of course, a more focused car list really feels like it leads to a game that has so much density and detail, but may appear smaller on the surface. PGR was a really great series, especially getting to finally play PGR 2 and 4 today. But at the end of the day, asking the question, is the racing game genre too saturated for a game like Project Gotham Racing? It's an interesting question because the racing game genre, in quantity, has dropped off significantly. I guess to some people PGR could be considered too niche, but it's a series that I would really like to see come back, not just for the great gameplay and experience itself, but to remind us that we don't always need the biggest game in the world.
It's the year 2005. Sony is presenting their new console at the E3 Expo, the PlayStation 3. Many sneak peeks showcasing new games were shown, but one of them stood out from the rest, because of how fucking epic it was. This CGI trailer showed a very frantic and violent race set in a desert. Cars, buggies, trucks, and motorbikes were not just racing, but fighting, crashing, and smashing each other in the unforgiving nature of the dry desert of Monument Valley. What is this game? This is MotorStorm. With Gran Turismo under their belt, Sony wanted to bet on another type of racing game. Something that wasn't sophisticated or elegant, but rather wild, fun, chaotic, and destructive. Developed by Evolution Studios, MotorStorm spanned 3 games in the main franchise and a couple of spin-offs. Now, here comes the important question. What made this series of games so special? The car selection is so diverse and there's a vehicle for everyone. From rally cars to dump buggies, from motorbikes to ATVs, from pickup trucks to SUVs, you will feel like a kid in a candy store. And not only that, every type of vehicle has its strengths and weaknesses, so you can choose wisely or take risks. It doesn't matter if you're playing the first game, Pacific Rift, Arctic Edge, or Apocalypse. The tracks are fantastic. They feel alive, they're full of shortcuts, jumps, and dangers. Sometimes you can use the environment as an advantage, like tearing down wood constructions in Pacific Rift or causing an avalanche in Arctic Edge. Your car is a weapon, yes, but Mother Nature can be more powerful. The games were set around an extreme music festival, so the soundtrack fits perfectly in each one of them. Rock and electronic music fills your ears and takes you for a ride through the desert, snow, or jungle. This changes in MotorStorm Apocalypse, where the score is completely made out of brilliant and dramatic electronic songs mixed with orchestral and cinematic arrangements that put you to the edge of your seat. There's also something this game nailed perfectly. Something I like to call the fear/fun factor. There is nothing more satisfying than coming out alive from a situation where you thought you were gonna die. Battling another car on the edge of a cliff, narrowly escaping a collapsing building, using all of your boost to reach the finish line before your car overcharges and explodes. Those things made every race so fun, intense, and unpredictable. This is fucking fantastic. I love this. I want more of this right now. From the dangerous deserts of Monument Valley and the unforgiving blizzards of Alaska, to a lush tropical island in the Pacific and the apocalyptic decadence of the city, MotorStorm offers an experience that no other game has been capable of replicating. There are rumors of a possible reboot of the series, but it's better to take them with a grain of salt. Or a spoonful. Don't get your hopes up. Well, those are the reasons of why I want this franchise back, because it brought lots of chaos and destruction. And that's what the arcade racing genre needs right now.
This has been Gamer Alex, with special guest appearances from JakeMG and Game Over Tapes. I hope you enjoyed the video, and have a great day.